Good morning, New Eden! Today is January 30th, 2022, and this is the Federation Frontline Report, a podcast where we interview the players of EVE Online and go over faction warfare news. I'm your host, Frozen Fallout, and today we will be interviewing Ashterothi, leader of the Convocation of Empyreans. Ashterothi, it's great to have you back on the show. So tell me, how's Space treating you these days?
Well, greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashterothi, and pretty good, actually. I have been, I had been starting to play a lot of like Final Fantasy XIV and other stuff as my like downtime game. But this Doctor Who event has sucked me back in, so I've put quite a few hours into EVE. But I gotta say, I've been probably spending more time in Whoverse than in New Eden, so there's that.
That's awesome. Actually, I'm going to be asking a little bit about that later on in our news section because, truthfully, unfortunately, I've been murdering too much in EVE Online to go off and find this other universe that we can go in. So I'd like to hear a little bit about it, and I think we got 2 days left, maybe have me get out there and take a look.
Well, the good news is that like the event itself is kind of like a progression. You start out with scanning down the sites that lets you build your first keys. Then in those keys, you get the stuff to build the next level keys, so on and so forth, all the way up the tiers. So, but the good news is that since we are towards the end, everybody wants to now dump their stock of strange matter and the blueprints and all that stuff because it's just going to be useless in 2 days. So if you just want to skip to the end and run some of the hardest sites or do some of the best hacking sites, it's really not that difficult to get those keys now.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So yeah, that's, advantage Frozen Fallout.
There's advantage both for proactivity and for, a little bit of laziness and letting other people pave the road for you, right?
Right, yep. So first question, 2 days ago, I saw that you created a new corporation. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with that?
Yeah, nothing gets past you. So a few days ago, I think 2 days ago, there was a big fight in HiSec involving Black Flag and a whole bunch of other people. And we had been asked to help out. And what I'd realized is like during the whole fallout of stuff that happened within the convocation, one of the people that left was the guy that was kind of running our war decking organization. So the only group that we had that we could do to war deck was Aderon Robotics, which isn't going to help much for a fight one jump from Jita. Being in Galente Faction Warfare.
Yeah, not much help at all.
No, not very much help. And the other one was our main structure holding corp, which would mean that we would have to expose our main structure holding corp to whatever the war was.
Ooh.
Which that didn't sound great either. So it was identified that we needed a new corp for our ability to perform war decks, either offensively or as a political organization, rather than just defending our structures. So yeah, that's what Empyrean Enforcement is designed to kind of be.
Okay, cool.
I like the fact that of the people that saw it, like within the first couple of hours, 2 people had noticed it and was like, I don't know what that means. Is it about attacking other people? Like, even if you don't know what it is, the name itself tells you enough that you can kind of guess what the whole shtick is about. So I consider that a design success.
Absolutely, yeah. No, when I saw it, I was like, okay, so this is going to be like a PvP division. It looks like of sorts. There's
right.
It doesn't look like faction warfare. So it's going to be something that's outside of faction warfare. And is going to deal directly with war decks in HiSec.
Correct. Yep.
Awesome.
Because we actually have we have agreements with several other organizations, including Black Flag. So we get called in on some of the more fun scuffles.
So tell me a little bit more about the convocation here. So we touched base on it last time that I talked to you, but I want to do a little bit more of a deep dive on this, and just kind of starting off, if somebody's interested in joining the convocation, like let's say the Federation Frontline as an alliance, is there a possibility of the Federation Frontline joining the convocation, or is it only corporations? And how does that go about, either way?
I would be willing to consider it, but I don't necessarily. I generally shy away from bringing in entire corporations.
Okay.
The main reason, I believe I talked about this last time, the Convocation of Empyreans comes from Malevolent Row Corporation. And Malevolent Row Corporation was originally envisioned to be Aderon Robotics' high-sec alt corp that was designed to funnel people into Aderon. Like that was its original purpose. But, as I went off and did stuff with Malro and that got bigger, and Aderon continued to remain relatively independent with their leadership that I left it with, trying to make the two mesh was starting to get confusing. Like having two different corporations that both are like, they don't feel connected. So by making this kind of shell alliance, the Convocation of Empyreans, that kind of makes it understand that these other things are subcomponents of it. So even though Aderon isn't technically in the alliance itself, having there be an alliance tent, as it were, that everything is under, allowed that kind of partnership to be better understood, right? We have a convocation level of understanding, and then we've got corp level understanding of how our operations work. But that's the thing, our corps are not, like, we don't just have a corps join, the corps represent the playing with the mechanics, right? Like Aderon is separate because Aderon needs to be in faction warfare. We have most of the people in Malro because for the most part it doesn't really matter, but we have split off in the past having specialized industrial corps or specialized something that requires using the corps structure to separate out people. But in general, we don't necessarily find the need to do that. So it's really just a giant corporation within an alliance. So if you wanted to join the convocation, for instance, I would ask, why wouldn't you be just joining Aderon Robotics? And if the answer is because you want to be your own independent person, then we would actually want to support you in being independent, not necessarily try to bring you in. The way I see the convocation is like the YMCA for Empyreans,
Nice.
right? Like there are the people that work there that are the staff, and sure they get paid and they make good money, but the understanding is that the value of the convocation is the services that we provide to people. Unlocking and maximizing player engagement with EVE Online by answering these questions, building these tools, paving the roads, developing good players, etc. That's our ultimate objective. So I am less interested in engulfing new corporations and more into just offering them services. Hey, I don't want you to have to give up your identity. I'm just going to offer you use of my structures because that way you can start to grow as a community. Because that's what I'm more interested in.
Interesting. Awesome. And so some of the services that you provide, I know that you've got the website that, you've provide some details on what's going on in the faction warfare, up-to-date maps, what's being killed where, some really great tools that are on the website there. But you also talked about structures. What kind of services do you offer regarding structures?
Well, past tense, before all of our structures got annihilated a few months ago, we had a full industry, several moons, etc. And even to this day, we're starting to rebuild, and as we rebuild, we're immediately opening things up. In order to mine in our moons, you don't have to be in the convocation. I've told people, like, if somebody shows up and they're blue, light blue, then that means that they've been gone ahead to come and join, right? Like, so, but for the most part, when I say the structures, I mean things like making sure that we have a right to rule with services available and, all that kind of stuff. We just need to make sure that we can protect it and figure out what order we want to do it in right now as we rebuild.
Okay, and so at this point, though, you've had your structures burned to the ground and you're kind of rebuilding, or?
Right. Yeah. We got our structures burned to the ground, and it's more like internal rebuilding, right? Because part of it was overextension in a lot of different ways. And so more or less, I am taking time to see what gets momentum. right? Like I could just be like, and now we're doing invasion or incursions and like set up the time and probably even successfully form a fleet. But like I imposing my will upon it has only gotten so far. So ultimately, my goal has been now to identify people who can be developing their various different branches and putting as much fostering into them as possible to develop a really solid leadership core. So that way, Aeron is a perfect example. It doesn't matter. We could flail around in Malro all we want. I could quit the game for a year and Aeron would barely notice. Like, we want there to be that synergy. So that way, like, if Aeron needs industrial needs or mining needs, basically the goal is that everybody can focus on what they want to, knowing that there's other pieces of the alliance that will focus on the other pieces for you. And so you can reach out to them for answers for whatever your inputs or dealing with your outputs are. So, in that sense, the convocation needs to exist in part to help facilitate Aeron in their operations. But ultimately, Aeron don't care. They're going to do it either way. They're totally independent. And that's something I really like.
Yeah, no, that's worked. I think that works out really well for you. And yeah, I think that's
it's
a
far
great
less
way.
Work.
Yeah, good way of going. Smart way of going about it. Work
Yeah.
smarter, not harder.
Yeah, I've got a lot of different commitments. Trying to make my videos, trying to do the podcasts, trying to make these tools and stuff. So, or not podcasts, but streams and stuff. So the more I can identify pioneers and be like, hey, I want you to be that person for my group, the better. And I think that a lot of people are obviously very nervous about stepping up into a quote unquote leadership position because it feels like you should know something. But the whole idea is that they can talk to me whenever, right? Like they have me and they have the other people as infinite, source of information and advice and all that stuff. It's just I need somebody whose job it is to be like, this is this is monitored. If this is going wrong, then I know who to talk to about that. And there's at least somebody who's making sure that gets taken care of. Like Oppenhammer is our buyback manager. He doesn't have to process every single contract, and he doesn't have to necessarily know how everything, all the nuances work. He just has his ultimate responsibility is just making sure that the buyback program is successful. If he builds a staff in order to do that, then that's fine. If he wants to do it all himself, then that's fine. As long as it remains within the constraints of what the convocation needs, then his responsibility is making sure it's healthy. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a thumbs up, thumbs down. Is it working? Yes, great. Move on.
Awesome. Yeah, speaking of videos and stuff that you've been making recently, I've been seeing you've been talking. I caught one of your videos recently. I was talking about objectives for faction warfare. And I really like it when I hear the stuff that you're talking about regarding this. You seem to have some really great ideas about it. I was just wondering if you could give us a little bit of more background, more ideas about what you're kind of thinking would improve faction warfare with these like objectives, and like I believe that you were talking about like CCP involvement. And that
Sure.
this is the one area in EVE Online where the players are actually screaming for CCP to have the empires do stuff, and we don't want them touching 0.0 or the incursions are bad enough, like when it comes to your space, but
there should be a space where people can just be focused on players, and there should be a space where players can engage with the story. I agree. So there's we'll talk about 3 different historic moments, both personally and collectively, that sort of informs this idea. Firstly, it is the idea of Aeron Robotics joining faction warfare to begin with, right? So in the beginning, Aeron Robotics was an industrial corporation. We were one of the biggest industrial corporations in Galente space. And yet, some of us were increasingly doing some PvP with some pirates, and we were struggling to maintain our positive sec standings and all that stuff, because this was before tags for sec. And then they announced that they were going to be revamping faction warfare. And we decided that we were going to try it for 2 or 3 weeks and make a decision about it. right? Now, obviously, this split the entire organization. Aderon Technologies was made, and like it kind of like blew up, or like it went off from there. But that core group that stayed with Aderon Robotics, we tried it out for a couple of weeks, and you know what? Aderon has never given up faction warfare since. Like, we've been dragged out by outside forces, but we always return, right? So that's number one, which is that we just needed the opportunity for the short window, right? The idea that we would try it out for 2 to 3 weeks was a reasonable enough of a structured commitment that it was easy for us to process and, you know, want to do, right? Like, do we want to become a faction warfare corp is a pretty serious question, especially when it's just a revamp that you don't really know the results of. But we want to try it out for a couple of weeks to see if it is the next big thing. That's totally reasonable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Number two was I forgot number two, so I'm going to jump to number three right now. Invasions, right? So what we saw in Invasions was a manifestation of the player base accepting the NPC's objectives, right? Like, the Triglavians were ultimately fighting for the Triglavians. I'm sure that, I mean, there's definitely people that were doing it just to fuck with things and to tear things apart and, you know, watch the world burn or whatever.
And they had like an objective of like, we want to mess with Jidda and the route between Jidda and Amar, you know. So there's other even weirder stuff, more than just I want to fuck with the game, but I want to fuck with commerce. Like, and
why would anybody want to do that? Why would anybody work for an entire year to try to communicate with enough people and get them informed enough so that way when Nyarja went live that we had enough forces in order to take it? Who would do such a thing?
That's
crazy talk. Anyway, so, but my point is that, like, even to this day, there are people who are not just interested in making high sec null sec, but are truly interested in being the Kybernauts, becoming proven, right? Like, CCP effectively put out this call by these NPC actors, and people flock to it.
Oh yeah.
It is the only feature I can think of ever in the history of EVE Online that has grown in popularity since its release, right? Most of the time features get checked out and then drop off. Invasions gained momentum as more and more people saw it and thought that this was incredible. Even new players that were coming in and saw that and like experienced that. And the biggest frustration that I hear is how high and dry they got left, right? That they want this, or they want further instructions. They want to feel part of it. They feel abandoned by Zoria and by Edencom, you know? And so what shows to me is that in spite of the fact that obviously EVE is a sandbox focused very much on player story, part of our story is our ability to interact with the universe's story. And there's a fair chunk of people that are very interested in that, right? And the third thing was during the golden age of faction warfare, during that like 2014 to 2016 time period, I think it was, the thing that really punctuated faction warfare were known as sieges. Okay, if you take a contested system and you try to take it. And I mean, we see them even now, although usually now it's like one system that's under focus, but it moves around. And that is where the real excitement comes from, right? Like, just going into faction warfare space and just picking a random system and going and running a random plex, your results may vary, but the action happens because it gets concentrated, and it becomes concentrated because of these sieges. So combining these together, my thought would be that we can have this concept of sieges that are invoked by the NPC actors. Okay, so like for instance, during the Mimitar and Amar faction warfare collusion event, House Sorum had nothing to hear, it heard nothing of it, like did not want this collusion, and ordered their supporters to retake one of the systems and end the collusion. And you know what? There was enough people that were more loyal to the Amar than they were to the mechanics that they did. They retook the system and broke the
I think
treaty.
that's one of the biggest success stories of faction warfare, I think, and it's something that needs to be touted a lot more, is this idea that there was a pact that was made by players, that was like, we're going to manipulate the game mechanics, and we're going to do this because this is what we want. And CCP being able to come in and, not hardball, like, just smashing down what was going on, which they can't really do anyways. They came in with this brilliant idea of, let's just have the NPCs say that this is bullshit. This system needs to come back to us. And it worked really well. And it's a great, like, interaction between players and CCP that is very soft and is not, like, a directive from CCP.
I honestly don't think that CCP had an investment on it going either way, because, I mean, the story just kind of unfolds, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point is that the NPC actor would not let that stand, right?
Right.
Like,
yep.
And that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that there is actually a lot of story going on in the background. It's just, it doesn't rise to consciousness very often. And so, like, the idea that House Sorum would want to use this opportunity to attack and take Flossiswind makes sense to things that happened before this point, right? And had ramifications to events after that point. And that's part of the point. It isn't that CCP is breaking it or somehow mechanically changing things in order to make the collusion not work. There's simply, okay, you do this and the universe reacts to it. And then you react back to the universe. And by the end of it, there is literally an Amar fleet, like Diamond Rat, Red Rat fleet, that attacked and reinforced a Mimitar Ashterothi that was owned by one of the Mimitar faction warfare groups that was there at that time. So, like, it was a for realsy, like, the lore characters and the player characters were more or less working together in the fight in some pretty dramatic ways, which I think is really cool. And I would like to lean more into that. So all of that leads me to the idea of campaigns, right? Where basically, for the example I like to give is, like, right now, Caldari State owns the system of Intaki. For those of you who do not know, Intaki is historically a Gallente system. In fact, the Intaki people are one of the remaining factions of the Gallente. There were some Intaki that split off and made the Intaki Syndicate because they didn't like the Gallente's treatment of the Caldari. But the planet of Intaki are still full of, Gallente natives. And historically, when the Caldari State take it over, they shit all over it. They dump toxic waste on the planets, they take cultural artifacts, they steal medication, they fight over land rights, they have war against each other between the mega corporations that leave, civilians dead. But these all play out, like, in the world news or whatever. So, like, the people that are paying attention can see these things. What I would like to see is, like, and again, so, like, this is how dated this is, but, like, Roden, the old president, back when he was, getting ready to run for presidency again. Let's see, he wants to keep his presidency, but, or actually, Salis Agard is a perfect example. Salis Agard is all about reinforcement of the boundaries, securing the boundary systems, right? That was her platform that she ran on. And therefore, the fact that Intaki is held by the Caldari State is unacceptable to the president of the Federation. And therefore, she will launch a campaign ordering all federal, all loyal to the Federation to aid and assist in the liberation of the system of Intaki. So now, for the next 2 to 3 weeks, the loyalty point gains in Intaki system will be doubled or more. The kills within the system will be worth something, and you will accrue points through the participation in different things, both in Intaki and in the constellation around the Intaki. And in the end, at the end of the 2 weeks, one of two things will be happening. Either the Gallente will have taken it and held it, or the state had held it. And now, either way of that result could kick back and have ramifications on Salis Agard, right? Now, she can't even protect her own people if the state manages to hold it. This brings her weakened. This makes it so that her political rival begins to have, to rise up, because she does have a political rival. There's the senator. I can't remember his name right now. Nobody cares either. So
stupid senator.
You get what I'm saying, though,
right?
Like,
No, the ability.
So this rhythm of, like, players impacting the story, which impacts the players.
Right. Yeah, no, that's huge. Like that would be awesome to be able to impact the story, to impact other NPCs and stuff like that, and see that our actions are influencing them and then their actions are going to influence us. And I think that that's faction warfare is the perfect spot for this, because it doesn't really work for NPC 0.0 or non-faction warfare space. I guess you could make like a whole new mechanic, a whole new thing, but why not use faction warfare? You have it. And I really like this idea. I think that these are some of the things that could really bring life to faction warfare. And to be honest, I don't think that it even needs rewards to begin with. Just starting with our NPCs interacting with us and our actions influencing the NPCs could be a beginning that would be beautiful to see at the very least. It's something that since the actions that happened, by CCP, since the ceasefire don't take system, these specific systems, when they got involved in that, I wish that they would have continued to expand on that and continued to do stuff, because they didn't give extra rewards.
They technically have.
Oh,
but
really?
You're right. They haven't mechanically followed up on it, I would say.
Right. They haven't mechanically followed up on it, but you're saying that they have followed up on it to a certain degree. Is it just in the Mimitar war zone, though, that this has happened? Because I haven't seen anything for the Caldari Galente, which kind of brings me to another question that I'll get to in a little bit. But basically, I haven't heard anything happening in the Galente war zone, and in fact, I haven't heard anything happening in the Mimitar.
Well, it's in Taki.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the two planets that are kind of in play when it comes to the lore story is Intaki 5 and Flosis Wind 4.
Okay.
Intaki 5 was the planet that was, when it was being, when it was owned by the Caldari last time, was the one that they were fighting over and dumping and having all this sort of stuff. So that's the planet that was in contention based on the Galente Caldari side. And Flosis Wind has been the source of basically all Amarian plot from that point on. Everything comes from that. Let me put it to you this way. The commander of the city of Flosis Wind when it was overrun, do you know who that was?
No.
A guy named Alar Chakade. Do you know that name?
No.
He's the guy who showed up with the EOM with the Titan and Doomsday the planet.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
The same dude.
Okay.
That's how much this has kind of spiraled out into other things, right? So, in fact, during those attacks, one of the places the Dreads got attacked was Flosis Wind. And what's interesting about that is that attack doesn't actually match the profiles of the other attacks. So there are continued and there's this kind of assumption that what really happened was that the Dread attacks that were happening in all the other places were in fact the EOM doing that. But Flosis Wind was House Sorum making a strike because they saw an opportunity to take cover with the other terrorist attacks. It gets ugly.
I find this stuff really fascinating. One of the things that I feel disappointed from CCP's angle on what they do with their lore is that they keep it low-key as fuck. And I really don't like that. It's so rich. It's so beautiful. I feel like it's the things that should be all over the monitors that they have repeating the same thing over and over again that just are throughout the entire game. When you dock, when you're flying near a gate, there's all these things to start telling you what's going on in the game. And instead of telling you what's happening in their lore, these things that they could be keeping us updated with, they just do random commercials with some minor things that I've seen in there that are kind of cool. But in general, how do we find out about this stuff? How do you find out, or how do you get engaged with it? I know the scope reports I've seen, and that's the most way that I get my information.
Yeah.
And I know there's lore on the website that you can go and dig into 40 billion pages worth of really good writing, really good lore. I've read some of it. One of my friends has since quit EVE, but he has read every piece of lore that CCP published officially on their website. But is there any other way to find this lore out?
Yeah, so you mentioned the scope videos. There's one piece about the scope videos, because I know that some people complain about how they don't come out as much as before, whatever. I just want to remind everybody that the scope videos were literally like effectively a labor of love of one person who made them happen, right? And who continue to make them happen. So like they make them when they can,
Mhm.
but like obviously that can't be their absolute priority.
And it's a lot of work
that
to make a good video. Like,
right.
making a shitty video just recently took me a long ass fucking time. And I'm pretty shitty at it, but even being really good at what you're doing when it comes to video making it's a labor of love more than more than profit, because I mean, to a certain degree I mean, these things are good for them to engage the players and stuff, but it's you don't get a direct profit. Like, I put out this video, it made us X amount of money.
Yeah, especially since honestly, like a lot of people like the scope videos, but even then, like the number of scope videos that get highly engaged with rather than like the ones that just kind of go under the radar isn't that great. Like when you think of scope videos, there's probably a few, you could probably think of like a dozen, but like there's 40, 50 plus or whatever scope videos. A lot of them became noise. In fact, a lot of people that say that they love the scope videos don't even know that there was a new scope video from the anniversary of Poachman. So that is a struggle. And but CCP absolutely has difficulty putting their lore up front and center, partially because historically the player base have told them not to, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, the idea, it's a focus on players,
It is
right? Like,
you're right. Yep. No, that's
why
true.
would we do anything involving the universe? That's just framework, whatever.
And that is kind of interesting that a lot of the scope videos that they do have and stuff is about the player wars that are happening out in 0.0 and stuff like that.
Right.
It's some really good
trying to make
stuff.
it a good mix.
Right. Then and that is something that I really appreciate, in the sense that they do report on a lot of player stuff. I just wish that they would make their lore a little bit more, I don't know, there's a certain level of, I love how much players control EVE Online, but the more and more that CCP like doesn't play their own game or interact with the players directly inside of the game, I feel like there's a disconnect that happens there that would be really healthy for such a heavy player influenced game. Because it's kind of like,
right.
I kind of want the developers and stuff to be players of this game and to interact with us, not just in the sense that they're hiding that they're a player and they don't talk about, and they stay in, high sec and low sec, don't get involved in 0.0 politics. Like, I get that kind of stuff, but I want this whole other interaction. And I think that this, having campaigns would be really awesome, and would be like the proper step in the right direction, where it would be seated inside of your activities list, or the what is it, the hell is that called, the new
the agency
if that could just like be like, oh, here's an event that's happening for faction warfare,
right.
The only thing that sucks is that you can't just jump into faction warfare without abandoning your corporation.
Well, that's the whole point, is that like it offers you an opportunity to come and take part for 2 weeks. And that's why, like, the reward, you said no rewards, but so one of the things I found really interesting in the last big roundtable that I participated in for faction warfare, helped moderate for, the takeaway that I found most striking was almost universally the players did not want better rewards in faction warfare. In fact, they wanted less ISK in faction warfare.
I think that ISK does mess with the game to a certain, like, the farming.
They don't want people that's there just for ISK. They want people that are there for the territory. They want people that are there because they care about their team. And so what they wanted was titles and jackets and medals and recognition.
Right, it doesn't need to be ISK. Yeah, the better thing is recognition, weird medals, weird like that. Yeah, absolutely, I completely agree.
Right. So what I was thinking is that there would be like an Intaki campaign medal, that if you participate so much, then you get that. If you get ranked so high, then you can get, just like in the real military, like the accommodation medals, medals of valor, whatever. And with it being a constrained thing, now you have something to show and talk about. You could actually have the agency give some form of analysis of how things are going, how much it's changed, how many ships have died, how many points you've earned. And then in the end, you have this record of like who participated, who did best, which corporation did the most, all this kinds of things, and that gets locked in. Everybody gets their medals, all that sort of stuff, and now you don't get the Intaki medal, campaign medal again until the constellation that Intaki is in comes back up for an event.
Awesome, yeah, definitely. So, real quick, kind of little change of pace here.
Well, I wanted to answer.
Go ahead.
We didn't actually answer the actual question. So there's scope.
Oh yeah.
There's there, but if you want the real live feed of information, if you want to mainline it into your veins, there is the world news feed. The world news feed comes out much more often than the scope videos, and often, well, all scope videos are part of the world news feed, but not all world news articles are part of the scope. And so that's where a lot of the real news comes out. And following the headlines between those things is how you can see things play out over time, right? Like you'll see that this group is preparing to do this in this one, and then like 2 weeks later they come out with a new world news, and it like the situation develops. So you can kind of follow these beats, you know, what's going on in Skarkon, what's going on in Intaki, what's going on in Flossiswin, by kind of following the headlines over time. And also, you know, they have 2 or 3 articles usually about every episode. Now, one of the things that my friend has done, can I post something on the chat?
Absolutely.
And I'll send the link
chat
to
is
you.
open to links.
So this is a GitHub, but really what it is this GitHub is an archive of every single world news that has come out. GitHub is a place to store text documents, and GitHub is searchable. Therefore, if you go to this place, you can search for any term, and it'll spit out every single time that has been used in the history of the world news. So this has been very handy for me. Like when I was doing my research on Celis Agard, right? How the fuck am I going to figure out the last time she was ever mentioned, right? Like, I don't know. But if I can run a search, well, Celis, and then it's like, oh shit, she ran for presidency in like 2006 or 2008 or whatever, right? Like, how would I have found that otherwise? So, but either way, they are very quiet about the world news. They don't make a big deal about releasing them.
And is that something that's on the website that
Yeah.
is? Okay, so it's part of the official EVE website, the World News.
Right. So there's if you go to universe.eveonline.com, that is their new lore portal, which is actually pretty decent now. They've also moved in a lot of stuff from like their books and moved them into the universe.eveonline.com. Like for instance, there was 3 chronicles that were in the Frigates of Eve book, but were not accessible otherwise. Now they are able to be read on that website, which is kind of nice. Either way, there. And then I just linked. If you go to universe.eveonline.com/new-eden-news, that is the world news feed, and you can even set up an RSS feed for it too.
Oh, cool! I might do that actually because.
Well, that's how Isabel's thing works, is that it just reads it off of the RSS feed.
Yep, smart. Sweet, I'm gonna bookmark that real quick here. Awesome, that's great. That is gonna be super helpful with reporting on the news.
Yeah, and at the end of every world news, so there's, like I said, there's usually about 2 or 3 articles. Like for instance, the latest one is about New Eden's YC1. This is the New Year's edition. YC1 New Year's YC 123 ends as Yule Festival celebrations usher in YC 124. So it's talking about like how all the different factions are celebrating the new year. And then Concord Inner Circle reportedly considered Edencom intelligence report on diplomatic opportunities with Triglavian clades. That's the kind of line that people should probably be paying attention to. It keeps it keeps cropping up. There's a whole thing about it. And then Interbus reports decrease in accidents during Yule Festival spaceship safety campaign. That's literally just those Yule posters, the Yule ad. What are they called? I can't remember what they're called in game now, but there's little items for the Icelandic thing. At any rate, and then spatial temporal data anomalies detected as New Eden experiences increase in volatile ice storms in relationship to the winter event. outrage as shipments of Minda Layer's rock opera's areas on a Crimson Chalice intercepted in Bleak Lands.
Interesting.
Federation protests lawless atmosphere of placid region systems under Caldari state occupation. So that's straight up calling out faction warfare.
That is, yeah, no, I like that. See, this is,
and then there's a whole bunch of other headlines
that I need to bring up a lot in the Federation Frontline report, I think, when we do our news sections and stuff like that. So this is gonna be awesome, just to kind of like.
I'm supposed to be reading these, but I haven't actually gotten to do a read of this one yet, because like I've done the previous two, but I didn't do this one yet because I've had so much other stuff to talk about with the Doctor Who event and stuff. But I really should come back and make sure to wrap this one up.
So you do videos on these, like usually, like going over everything that is being said on. That's awesome. I gotta.
Well, right now I've tried to just do a reading of it, because I know a lot of people don't want to read it. Like I will do analysis and stuff too.
Mm-hmm. But just getting the reading is pretty huge. Like, yeah.
Right. Yeah. People just want to be able to put on a YouTube video, kick it to 1.25 and like know what's going on.
Yeah. Hear everybody in the chipmunk voice. So. So speaking of Doctor Who, how that's been tying you up, I haven't done anything with this event. There's 2 days left on the event here, and I know you've been doing like a deep dive into this. What can you tell us? What's is it too late to get involved? I know we touched a base on this a little bit, that you said it kind of paves the road here, but tell me what did you find out from this event? What did you see when you dug into it?
So the people that are watching live definitely could still finish the event, right? Like, there's a couple of things about it. First of all, I'll break it down a little bit. There's two different ways of kind of looking at it. First of all, the way it works, unlike other events, previous events have had sites, and you go and do the sites, and there might be harder sites in part of the other area space, and maybe different kinds of sites, like mining sites or whatever, right? Hacking sites. And really you just keep on doing the sites, and the tasks reward you, and then you work your way up the track. But it's really just the same task over and over again, more or less. Well, this is actually closer to like a real journey, right? Where the way it works is that you can hunt down and scan down the warp matrix convergence sites, which are a tier 1 relic site that appears everywhere. They're more frequent in low sec, but they're the same everywhere. And what they drop is the pieces to make what's called a curious filament. When you use the curious filament, then you go into the tier 1 exploration site, which is basically a 30-minute timer. You're in a weird environment. It's really pretty. And there's like probably like 15-20 cans, of like moderate, easy to moderate difficulty. And what you get there are the pieces to build several of the other keys. You can build the precarious, which are the first tier combat sites. You can build the the enigmatic, which are the tier 2 exploration sites. And you can even get some of the stuff, or you can even theoretically get a mysterious, which is the tier 2 or tier 3 exploration, and the hazardous, which is the tier 2 combat. And then you do those to complete this, to get the stuff to get into the tier 3 combat sites, and then the tier 4 combat sites. Once you get like at least one step past curious, you're probably going to get a skin every exploration site and quite a few of the combat sites. Combat sites, you get much less because there's only one rec, but they go super fast, right? The combat sites are just a single saucer with Daleks that respawn, and then there are these different towers. And basically the number of Daleks in the spawn and the number of towers are what denotes how hard it is. The easiest one has no respawns of Daleks and no towers. The second one has smaller respawns of Daleks, but 2 towers, one in each direction, that can do quite a bit of damage if you don't get to them fast enough. And then tier 3 doubles them, so now there's 2 towers in each direction. And then the tier 4 has 3 sets of 2 towers to go after. I think it's 3 sets of 2. I know it's 3 sets. So, and getting those towers down quickly, the thing is that they are like 50 kilometers away or more, but they have almost no hit points. So as soon as you can project to them, they're gone. but they're doing an incredible amount of damage. The Daleks are nuding you. The saucer shoots big bursts of damage, but shoots very slowly, but also launches bombs that can that damage your capacitor. So if you let it overwhelm you, it can take you out really quick.
Yeah, it looks like No Meaning is talking about, like, pro tip, burn towards the closest group of towers, kill them, and keep going in the direction that they were at.
Right.
Don't.
So there are two
of
things
the
at your
don't
advantage.
Kill you. They teleport you to the other side.
Exactly. That's what I was about to talk about.
Wow, that's crazy.
So you have two advantages at your disposal when it comes to going through these combat sites. First and foremost, there are red buffs and blue buffs within the room. And each room it's not randomized, right? So like every tier 3 combat room will be exactly the same when it comes to the positioning of the buffs, so you can learn them, right? So these buffs speed you up by 200%, which means that my Caracal goes from going like 700 meters per second to 2.2 k meters per second, which is pretty fun. It doubles your attack speed, or half again your attack speed. It increases all of your stuff. So that's what gets you capable, right? Like if you can grab that blue buff that's right there, then that makes you fast enough and strong enough to be able to take down those threats right away. And the second thing that's at your disposal is what he was talking about, which is that these sites are basically abyssal pockets, but rather than a boundary that destroys you when you go through it, what it basically does is micro jump drive you 150 kilometers backwards. So you go out one side and you come in the other. And since the towers are on opposite sides of each other, you just burn towards the closest one, kill it, then charge straight past it into the wall, which jumps you within 12 kilometers of the other tower, and then kill it really quick, and then burn back to the saucer and help out your buddy killing the saucer.
That's cool. I have to try these, so I can just go and buy a filament and jump into these combat sites if I want.
Yeah. So what I was saying, I think it was before the show.
There's the tier and stuff like that you can do to get it all. Right. But you can also just go and just buy a lot of the stuff on the market, because I've been hearing there's a lot of money to actually be made, and there's objectives on the market, right?
Yes, there's actually objectives to buy and sell your materials, and even to sell like a key, right? Like you're supposed to build a filament and sell it, and that's the other way of. So the two ways of dividing up the event is combat versus exploration, right? You can do the exploration sites, which are increasing difficulty to the point where the mysterious are 10 to 15 cans, where over half of them are like sleeper red difficulty, right? Where you've got suppressors with 70 coherence, and just it's a nightmare. But for good hackers like myself, you can get them all done, and that's when you can get like the most amount of treasure per key, more or less. Like I get 2 to 3 skins per mysterious that I do. And in fact, tier 3 mysterious is the lowest tier thing that will let you get dapper suits and the scarves that we've seen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I really want to get a scarf. That's I know you can buy it. It was one of my buddies was like, yeah, right. I didn't do the missions and stuff, but I did. I was the sucker that just bought all the cool stuff, because you
can't buy the dapper suit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. They only come from drops, and those are only going to increase in value, right? Like there's always going to be a new Doctor Who fan coming into the game. There's always going to be more people finding it and wanting it, and so these things are going to be stupid valuable.
Yep. Less people that'll be playing the game that actually have it as the future goes on, because that's just reality of what happens.
People that have it quit, and then it's now locked on their account or whatever, or they just don't make it available and they just stash it away in some box. Increase in scarcity. Anyway, so there's the exploration versus the combat, but then there's progression versus reward, which is it sounds like a weird dichotomy to make, but let's be honest, the reward track isn't the big ISK makers, right? Like you get drugs and you get some red versus blue skins, and that's cool. It's good to do. It's good to do the track and get those skins to be able to say that you did it, all that stuff, and if you feel like you want to progress. And that has its own puzzle to it. What I like about that is what I end up with is a bunch of piles of all the different strange materials, a whole bunch of blueprints, and a bunch of tools. Like I have my combat ship and I have my exploration ship, and I basically play a game of what's next, right? I'm like, okay, what's next? Oh, I have to hack a site. Okay, okay, I hacked a site. Okay, what's next? Oh, I have to sell the stuff. Okay, I sell the stuff. Okay, what's next? Oh, I have to. But it keeps mixing it up, right? And that is actually one of the things I really like about it, is the fact that if you want to progress, you basically have to cycle between the different tasks in order to maximize your progression. So in that case, you would literally just like get the keys that you need or do the stuff that you need in order to just complete the stuff and get the points. That's if you want to complete the track in the next 2 days. But if you just want the cool prizes and the skins that drop and, you know, whatever, then just buy some tier 3, tier 4 filaments and run them and hope that you get a dapper suit, or, you know, get some tier 3 mystic and start having fun with those. And the thing is that those sites also drop a whole bunch of stuff. So you kind of get to a point where you sort of have an engine where you only have to buy like maybe 1 or 2 materials that you just happen to not have, which is actually another big thing I want to say. One of the things that people keep thinking about is like, oh, I have to grind so many sites in order to get my first key or to get keys. Something that CCP Fozzie said repeatedly that I think a lot of people didn't catch was it's designed such that people will use the market to get the pieces that they are missing. And I don't think that people like thought about what that means. Designed to do that. Well, the answer is that the drops for the strange materials are, while not rare, there's enough different strange materials that chances are you haven't gotten them all yet.
Right,
but
it's kind of like
get
a ton.
one,
you got to get all the resources.
Right, but more importantly, when you get one, you get too many.
Right, yeah, you end up, you'll end, and just so, the way that numbers and random works, that you're gonna probably
like they come in infrequent but big piles.
Okay.
I went from I have no 79 to I have 80 79. Why 79? So now I have basically the way it works is because there's no necessarily there's reasons why all 4 of the materials could be scarce to any given person. You could just go out and find stuff, and you have a 1 in 4 chance at best of finding the material that you're missing, or you can sell some of the material that you have excess of and buy some of the material that you're missing.
There you go.
See, that's what they mean by it's designed that way.
Yep, absolutely. Commander Cotton Fluff says, how many times have you forgotten to push the redeem button this event? You're getting better at it.
So that is the real problem, okay? Like, that is actually legitimately... I've complained about this every single event, and the fact that, like, as an ADHD person, I feel like attacked by the fact that I have to make sure to remember to hit the button, otherwise I'm not making progress again. But the issue is that because of the fact that your progression is actually more infrequent, like, it's not like you can't train your brain, right? Like, I make the mistake of not completing my tasks. In a previous event, you have a task at the beginning, you have a task when you kill enough rats, and then you have a task to kill the boss. Okay, well, if I forget to hit the task at the beginning, then the rats I kill don't count towards it, and then it like gums up, and then I don't get counted for the boss, but then the next one I run will finish it or whatever, right?
Right.
So I get punished for that. But what my brain does is after, a little while of this, it learns. Like, I suddenly feel like as I'm activating the gate, I'm like, oh, I should push the thing. As I'm getting about halfway through, I'm like, I should really check to see whether or not the task has been clicked. All that sort of stuff. Like, I know to check in. But because what triggers the button changes all the times, and the frequency in which I do get to finish a task changes all the time, I forget all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So... But that's what I'm saying. Like, literally, when I'm running things and when I'm trying to progress are 2 totally different things for me. Because when I'm trying to progress, I'm collecting big amounts of matter. I'm trying to get a bunch of keys so that way I can do everything. And then I go, okay, now that I have everything, what does the tasks want me to do?
Yeah. No, this sounds like a great event. I hope that we get more kind of cool just things that not necessarily crossover events, but just new events. I always not just the we've got some good recyclable events that are out there that are I love them when they come up. The winter event is my favorite new-ish event that they've kind of come out with. But like the Halloween event, all that stuff is really great. But I really like when there's this special cool stuff going on in EVE Online. And there was a big uproar of weirdness from Reddit, which, grain of salt Reddit usually, because they're 90% of them not playing the game anyways. But it's a I found it to be really kind of cool, and the talks that you had with CCP about it really brought it in for me as being like, yeah, this is the, people were like, I saw a lot of complaint, oh, I'm not making a billion ISK, in the first 20 minutes of doing this is ridiculous, or or realistically, I guess they were like, I did it for 5 hours and I didn't make my billions of ISK that I normally would make at my other events. And they even said at the beginning of this isn't about making money, this is like a crazy crossover event to get some cool skins and stuff like that. But I guess you could make a lot of money, you just had to be different. Joe Bain said that he made like 40 billion ISK, or I don't know, some crazy amount of ISK off of just trading in the market, where you just buy low, sell high.
Right. So there's that. But also, the reason why this event hooked me, I'll tell you this, because I kind of have this pattern, I'm not going to lie. I do my stream stuff and all that stuff, and then usually my chill out game for the evening, as I said, was Final Fantasy 14. Partially because when I'm wanting to chill out, I don't necessarily want to have to be smashing D-Scanner or anything. I just want to have a totally different types of game. However, after the second day of the event, because they had to fix a bunch of bugs on the first day, after the second day of the event, when progress was third day of the event, because the second day you couldn't make any progress either. So on the first day of real progress, I remember figuring out what I'm going to do for the evening, and it suddenly occurred to me that what's really going on is that this is a race, right? That at this exact moment, no one is running tier 4s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The capability of building them hasn't been made yet, which means whoever gets there. That's also when I noticed that the Dapper suits are not on sale on the store.
Oh, right.
And that's when I was like, oh, this is a race to get the first Dapper suit. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, I'm pretty sure the first Dapper suit sold for something like 5 billion, and they're still selling for like $1.5 billion, and most of them were selling for like 3 billion. So, and that's during the event. Right. How much are those things going to be worth in a year when we still have Doctor Who fans, but they don't have an event to get it from? Like that. Yes, there is ISK in this freaking event, dude. I've made probably about $1 billion out of this event, but that's the other thing is that a lot of people don't think, when they think about how much events are worth, they often fail to fully process how much the event is actually worth.
Right, especially one-time events or one-time skins like those crazy drone skins that are out there that I've seen.
Oh, Cryptic Mimesis, yes.
I mean, they're not that expensive on the market yet, but if they don't release that again soon in an event, I would drop 5 billion on it, just to, if there was the only way to get it was 5 billion.
Yeah. Well, the simple one, Purity of the Throne. Purity of the Throne were less than $1 million per when they came out, but that event happened 4 years ago. And you know what? Princess Katniss is only going to be coronated once, so chances are that skin isn't coming back. And you now see, copies of that skin that are going for 60 million, which may not seem like much for a skin, but it was 500,000.
Right. Yeah. The price increase. It's like saying that, well, my house is worth $1 million now, or $200,000 now. It's like, oh, that's not that much money. And they're like, well, yeah, but I bought it at $10,000 or I built it at $5,000. It's an insane growth there. One of the things that Stylestar was asking is, how long do you think it would take to completely finish the whole event? Is it something that can be done in a day? Or
I posted pretty regular updates. I'm pretty sure it took me a little bit longer than last event. Last event I completed in one stream. I'm pretty sure I completed it over the course of 2 days. So there's the first 2 days when it was all broken, mm-hmm. and then within a day or two after that I had it completed.
Okay.
But even then, that was me not doing it the efficient way. That was me finding the stuff, and there wasn't stuff to buy on the market yet,
Right. So you're not you weren't able to speed it at that point. This time,
right.
Today you'd probably be able to do it a lot quicker if you're just buying the shit off the market and not mm-hmm. trying to find it all yourself. Just going for that. Like you said, just grab those tier 4, filaments and go hunting.
Well, yeah. If you want to do the event though, there are the tasks.
Oh,
are all
but then
over
there's
the place.
the task. Yes, the whole tasks. Yes. You do
and
have
tier
to do a
4
bunch of different
is
stuff.
hard as hell and hard to get. So tier 4s are actually going to like tier 3 is probably the sweet spot where most people should like reasonably look towards. Tier 4 is deadly, and I'll put it this way: I have yet to actually build my first perilous filament because I'm still missing one material.
Oh, okay. Yep. So yeah. So it's a lot of work to get through all of that. All right.
I've either built or ran 15 dangerous, which is the tier of combat before that.
Okay.
Maybe 20.
And tier 4 is the highest you can go. That's the
tier 4 is the highest. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Tier 4 combat, tier 3 exploration. Because so both of them have 2 tiers. Both of them have 4 different tiers. It's just the exploration. Tier 1 exploration is the K-space sites that you scan down, right? So there's 3 filament tiers for exploration, and there's 4 filament tiers for combat.
Okay. Yep. So one thing I just wanted to touch base on real quick, because I've seen you've been putting out some videos on this, and I haven't had a chance to kind of sit down, and I think it might be kind of interesting to talk about it with just on the show here. What have you learned about NFTs? What the hell are NFTs? What the fuck is going on with this whole weird shit? Like,
okay, I've gone on a journey, right? This is something that isn't really well understood, and this is also, I come from a software development world, so I remember considering buying Bitcoin when it was 30 units a coin. So
I remember. I do remember that time as well, and I was like,
so yeah, you know what? But I worked at a software development company, so there were people that were all getting into it and stuff. I feel dumb, but either way, there have been a couple of really good videos that have come out about it. Josh Strife Hayes came out with a 22-minute video that kind of explains NFTs from a gamer perspective and why it's sort of problematic. And then immediately after that, a really good YouTube channel called Folding Ideas came out with a 2-hour, 18-minute long breakdown of the history of it, where it came from, its technology, the people that are invested in it. And let me tell you, it is garbage all the way down. I even, for a long time I was like, oh, well, the current iteration is dumb, but the underlying technology is interesting. But the more you look into it, the more you realize that the underlying technology is also pretty darn problematic and potentially completely unsustainable. The entire shtick came out of the housing, crisis, out of the housing bubble, because they couldn't continue to do this mortgage stuff. And so as we were recovering from the housing bubble or housing crash, that's when Bitcoin came up, right? So it from the very beginning, the biology of it, the DNA of it, and the people that are most behind it are the very same shady people that are literally not even allowed to trade in normal stuff anymore because they've gotten in trouble. But NFTs aren't normal stuff anymore, so they can. It's just
that seems pretty shady. Good, that's a good quick breakdown on, and yeah, I haven't heard anything good so far other than people that are not necessarily good, but just the companies that are you're gonna make lots of money off of this. This is how you're gonna pay your mortgage in the future, and it's well, there is a thing there, right? There is a thing there, but it's basically the same as saying databases, right? It's just a different way of storing data. It's a technology that, quite frankly, hasn't matured yet. Mm-hmm. There are still some pretty significant issues that they haven't worked out past, and they just hand wave away. A good example of this is proof of work, right? The entire function that goes off of proof of work, which is these massive calculations that these computers have to do in order to do it. And this is the whole Bitcoin mining or Ethereum mining and stuff like that. That's what's really happening, is that you're processing these proof of works and hoping that you are the first ones to complete it, and then you get your Ethereum, and that's how the blockchain works. But here's the problem with that. This is why Bitcoin is so slow for transactions. This is why a lot of the Ethereum costs so much to mint, is because as this becomes more popular, by definition, there's a diminishing returns against effort. So the real nightmare scenario about Bitcoin and all these other cryptocurrencies are the only reason why they've actually successfully functioned up until this date is because they have not received
extreme adaptation or like adoption, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like
So
if they'd
as soon as
actually
everybody,
accepted if they'd actually succeeded in their goal of to the moon, then the actual architecture that makes cryptocurrency work would not be able to keep up with the actual work needed to make it function.
Okay,
That's a problem.
interesting. Also going to take us on just another kind of different track here.
Please.
Yeah, away from weird shit that I don't know.
I'm
Like
so tired of talking about apes.
I always find it to look at it from afar and go, that's interesting. Moving on. Even Bitcoin, as much as I wish I would have not been like, that's interesting. Moving on. I don't know. I just don't want to deal with that shit sometimes.
It's literally trading cards. Right?
Yeah,
it's taking something useless, cardboard or a unit, a place in a database, and it's putting something on it that convinces people that it's worth something.
Yeah, it's the same. I guess that's the reason why I didn't get into Magic either. Is that just is like, I mean, I played it, but I would never was one of those
functions.
Trying to get. Yeah. At least it does something for you. Yeah, baseball cards is actually that's a much better analogy. Completely useless-ish. I guess not completely. There's stats,
only for investments.
Information. There's
Yeah, and you can look at your picture of your NFT too. I mean, you can set it as your avatar now on Twitter. Congratulations.
Anyways, moving away from NFTs.
Please.
Real quick, we had talked a little bit at the beginning of the show last time that we had talked about the World of Darkness.
Yes.
And how you used to be involved in this. This is something that's like a huge passion of mine. It's got minor relations to EVE Online due to the merger and loss of and not the creation of and all the things. But I always find it really kind of interesting. Do you have any cool stories from your time, or do you still play today? Is this an ongoing journey for? It's an ongoing journey for me. So I still run. Yeah. I run games at like Gen Con and stuff.
I haven't played in a while. I haven't played in a few years, but I would like to again. I guess so. One of my favorite stories is we were playing a game that was closer to like a hunter group, where it was there's two people that were vampire. There was a werewolf and a changeling, I think it was. So there's like
a mixed game.
Yeah. So it's like the idea is I call it like a Hellboy campaign. We brought together a group of monsters to hunt the monsters sort of situation set in Chicago. And so like the Drwho had a riverboat. I guess, in Chicago they have like rich people have their own boat just in the lake, right? So, a lake boat, I guess is what you call it. And so that was like his haven. And used it as a base of operations, and there's all this, there's this mystery unfolding and dealing with this mage cabal and all that stuff. And then I got orders to leave, and so suddenly I had 2 weeks to leave, and so this campaign went from, this perpetual unfolding story to, we got to wrap this up in 2 weeks. So the way I managed this was that in the next adventure, the Drwho woke up at one night, went out, opened the door, and there were basically 4 suicide vests filled with TNT. And that was it. I just put that into play. And so then the Drwho invited all the people over and then dominated them to try to get them to go and like just do what the Drwho needed to be done and sacrifice themselves, because he also like there's been rivalries between them. So this was a great way to deal with his rivals and the problems that he had. One of them resisted, the werewolf resisted, which ended up like this big scuffle on there. The changeling, so the changeling didn't win the resistance role, but changelings are weird, and so won like his fey magic ability, and so he showed up at the location of the Mage Cabal's haven, or like headquarters, which was a bookshop. But rather than an actual suicide vest, he now has this burlap sack with a string that's connected to like a sewn button, because he basically changelingified it even in his own like being zoned out by being dominated. So then he presses the button, which fulfills the requirements of the Drwho, and then he's free, and so he charges back to go try to deal with what's going on. Like it was hilarious because it was, these players had been working together, but these rivalries between the players had come too, and so all I needed to do was give them the catalyst, and they just ripped each other apart.
So you normally would be the storyteller then?
Often,
Yeah. That, well, of course. Well, if you ever hear that somebody story tells and they tell you a story about when the game and it's them being the storyteller, it's like, okay, so you're the storyteller. Normally,
right?
it's just the curse of being a storyteller. So I always find that those kind of like little tidbits about the people that we interview always kind of interesting to hear about different activities, other things that they're interested in. So speaking of which, kind of wrapping it up here, but before we do you have any projects that you're currently working on, anything that you want to promote?
Well, I just got done filming 6 hours total across 2 days, in which I went over every single thing that I could possibly think of when it came to fittings.
Ooh.
We started from ship selection down to the use of the UI for the fitting window, and then going into all of the options for high slots, how guns work, turrets versus missiles, all that kind of stuff. We went to mid slots and talked about shield tanks and prop mods and E-war systems and different races E-wars and all that kind of stuff. At the low slots, we talked about everything from like the attribute bonuses to the weapons bonuses to the armor tank and how all that worked, the differences between those, rigs, calibration. There's so much information in that. It was a complete brain dump, and thankfully I had more than a few big name people drop in every once in a while, and so there was contributions to things that I missed as we
Good.
went along.
Yep.
So I'm currently going through the process of trying to like chapter it out and making it ready for like YouTube or whatever. It's taking longer than I expected because my entire real life has been completely slammed since that last stream to literally just now, or like went the start of this stream. But I wanted to make as comprehensive a fitting guide as possible. So yes, it's a lot of information, but it's the kind of thing that if you can sit through it, I guarantee you that there's more than a few things that you're going to learn. And I try to look at it because like what I hate about the way the EVE Online is presented is that each thing is presented to you independently. It is a Corelli A-type armor repper. What does that mean? Well, don't worry about it. That's just the one you need. Okay. Well, what makes it A-type? What makes it Corelli? If I can't get an A-type Corelli or if it's too expensive, what would be a good alternative? Why would it be a good alternative? What if I wanted to go get my own A-type Corelli armor repper? Where would I go to look for that? You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah, there's all the nuances to EVE Online's fittings that you don't. 90% of PvPers don't really give a shit. It just they get that main thing, but that information is important, like you're saying.
Right. My goal was to capture as many of the meta rules as possible, right? Like compact modules mean that they take less fitting, and lasers in general are more accurate and project better than other weapons, and artillery are the furthest shooting but slowest, and therefore highest alpha. Hybrid or lasers and turrets projectiles are diametrically opposed to each other in functionality. Every race is T2 or tank for their T2 ships are specialized to defend themselves against the damage type of their opposing faction. There's all these different rules that if you just see the resistance profile of a Guardian, you don't realize that the reason why the Guardian has a particularly high explosive thing isn't just because it's T2 and so therefore better. It's that it's T2 and therefore hostile against the Mimitar's build, and the Mimitar's damage type is explosive.
Yep.
So that's what you would expect. So trying to actually like unlock real understanding rather than just memorization and like fitting. Here's fits.
Right.
I tried to avoid talking about individual fits. I talked about concepts, like the Nutristan or Logi ships, or how things work together in practice, or what sort of things you manifest that we see manifested. but I didn't want to break down like individual fits and how they work. It was more about like how
the module
here's
works.
The question.
Why the
right? I didn't go over the Newt Tristan fit, but I did explain why a Newt Tristan, being a close range brawler, uses Newts, webs, and afterburner, but wouldn't use a target painter or a micro warp drive, right?
Yep.
That when you see when you see a micro warp drive in a web, you kind of go you ask questions, or like if you see a disruptor, a micro warp drive, and a web, you're like, well, what range are you wanting to engage at, right? So understanding how the pieces actually fit together was what I was striving for. So there's that, and that's the kind of thing like I've been trying to do with my YouTube videos. So I guess overall, this is just an advertisement to go to my YouTube and subscribe, because what I do is when I do my Twitch streams, I do it in such a way that the goal is to be able to break them down to make good content for YouTube as well. So as you pointed out, the video about faction warfare and how I'd fix it, that was just a subsection of a larger Twitch stream.
Mm-hmm.
But I structure my Twitch streams as such that they can be broken into these logical components, so that way you can enjoy them as just topics on YouTube.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like what you do there. And yeah, I highly suggest go check out Ashterothi's channel. We'll put a link in the show notes and everything for people to go check that out for sure. Last but
Other
not...
than that, I will say also, if people are interested in taking part, the Convocation of Empyreans is recruiting, and we are here to maximize player engagement with EVE Online. So if you want to come and participate, get access to our stuff, learn, be part of a community that will help you grow, and get help from me about whatever you need, you can go ahead and go to our Notion. Actually, well, you should go to our Notion either way. We have a wiki. It's linked from the EVE Academy website, but I can get you the URL too. But we try to keep guides and information there, both for people within the convocation, but also in general. Like I have a whole section on the Abyss with a bunch of information there and whatnot. So yeah, and you can come there and you can either check out the stuff that we provide or join the convocation if you're interested.
Cool. Also, I'll make sure to add that as well into the show notes there. And then last but not least, do you have any shout outs that you want to give?
I do. My shout out is to, I've got two, to Jay Kuhn and to Jack Goller. I've had, as I mentioned, I've been focusing on trying to make it so that there's like a really solid leadership core underneath me, that actually people like understand their purpose and their interwoven connection with each other, and therefore people know who to go to with different problems and they can communicate with each other. Jay has been with our group since before, back in Faction Warfare. He's the guy who first developed our LP buyback program. He's been great. Every time I've just handed him a problem, he's helped me, he's crunched through it and served it well. And now he's our COO, and by God, he's really helping make all of this stuff work. And the other guy like I said, Jack Goller, he's relatively newer, but he is aggressively proactive and just the kind of guy that I'm looking for. And both of them have worked extremely hard with other people to make sure our wormhole Atlantis remains secure, increase the activity therein and its value, etc. So these guys have both worked really, really hard for the convocation. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that we are a little bit over our time here, so I think what we're going to do is skip out on the news today. We got the monthly report, though, that we're going to be doing next week. Really just want to thank you so much for coming on to the show here. I did see one thing here that I almost forgot about, but there was one request from chat here, was that Commander Cotton Fluff says that he was wondering if you could give the short version of the story of how you saw him grow in EVE from joining him.
Man. All right, I'll tell
now.
this story. This is honestly one of my favorite success stories of EVE Online. It proves so much of kind of what I believed about how development works, or like player development works, not game development. Commander Cottonfluff joined us, a relatively new player, but more specifically, he has a heart condition. His heart condition means that he's not allowed to get too excited. It could hurt him or kill him. And so he started talking to me first because we were having some conflicts. We were defending structures. We were, doing things like PvP combat. And he felt that he could not participate in that combat, and therefore he wasn't very valuable. And we talked about it, and I'm a strong believer that like everybody's necessary in order to make it done, right? Like just because somebody doesn't want to fly a Macarial in the fleet doesn't mean that they can't be just as integral to the success. And so he became one of our first like major XO kind of guys who made sure that like I said, well, if you want to help out with a fight, but you can't fight, you know what you can do? Supply. And he learned all this stuff about hauling. He became really, really good at that. He made sure that things were in place. During some of our bigger battles, he would sit there in station and just hand things out to people, which, let me tell you, having a dedicated person who's willing to just do that and not go for any glory is incredibly effective and useful. And then one day he comes to me and Fonsui and he goes, "Hey, I want to get into the Abyss." And we're like, that's like the opposite of the no pressure. Like, are you sure you want to do this? He's like, yeah, I kind of want to, I want to step into this. And so, we teach him the very basics, and he starts doing it. And he comes back every once in a while, and he gives us these stories about how he's, completed tier 1 and successfully in tier 2 and tier 3, and how much he's making and what he's getting and all this stuff. And then lo and behold, like the next time we have some sort of fight going on, when we're doing faction warfare stuff, look who shows up. But Marcus, Commander Cottonfluff, wanting to fight alongside everybody else. He is now, the thing is that trying to make him plunge into it was too intimidating and too stressful. But telling him that it was okay for him to just take it at his own pace, each step of the way, he became comfortable and then was willing to take the next step. And that allowed him to slowly but surely become a skirmish commander in Goonswarm Federation.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
That is insane.
That's huge. I can't do this PvP to fleet commander with a condition that like
PvP is too stressful.
PvP for me is stressful, and like I've been doing this forever, and truthfully it's not really, there's like a part of me that just kind of like just goes with the flow with it, but there is a certain level of, I could see that where if you just take it more zen-like with PvP, you're probably way better. Like, I know that I fuck up a lot because all of a sudden
digest it in chunks. It helps.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you all for watching. Thank you so much, Ashterothi, for coming on to the show here. It's been great. It's always great to have you on. There's so much information, so much stuff that I learn every time that I talk to you, basically. So, it's really great to have you on here. We do broadcast live every Sunday, 2300 Eve time, 5 p.m. Central Time. On Twitch. If you missed us live, though, you can always check us out, the Federation Frontline Report on our awesome new website. We have federationfrontline.com is our new website that we've created that has all of our posts from here, any cool videos, and I plan on doing a little bit of blogging, not like a lot, but just a place to write down some stuff about faction warfare and what's going on. And we might do a feed into it from the world news, because that's something that I'm going to be doing like some deep dives into now, and I don't know how after 15 years of playing EVE I have no clue about this. So you learn something new every day. You can also catch us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all the other platforms that exist out there. We have the video version, of course, on just YouTube. If you have news that you'd like us to talk about on the show, after action reports, just cool things that are happening in EVE Online or in Faction Warfare. We're willing to pay 10 to 100 million ISK to get some stories out there, depending on the quality and effort, whether we post it onto the show. So just go ahead and email Frozen Fallout in-game with any kind of information, any kind of stories that you want told on the show here. We'll definitely get you over the ISK, and then we'll get it evaluated and see if we can fit it into a show. If you're interested in joining up with the war effort, you can always jump into our chat room, Federation Frontline in-game. You can apply in-game to us at the Golden Age Stories. Also, there's other faction warfare corporations out there, Aderon Robotics, tons of other ones, faction warfare for the Galente, Kaldari, Amar, whatever's your suit. Go out there, find a corporation, NPC, player-owned, whatever, get into the action, or just come on down to Black Rise or any of the other faction warfare areas with your ship and shoot people. We're always more than happy to see people in the faction warfare zone, regardless of whether they're ally, enemy, neutral, or a pirate. We all want something to shoot, so come on down and we will find something to shoot together. If you're interested in anything else that we do here, we definitely have also our Golden Age Stories website, theageofstories.com. You can always go there to find all the other stuff that we do with the World's Darkness, all the other crap that I do too. But yeah, thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you for having me.